to understand and move towards a better management. So the idea is to try to really understand, based on the whole cycle and all the analysis about the inputs, process, outputs, outcomes, but was really understanding how these variables were moving in terms of try to recommend and try to address certain key issues that have to be addressed in the short term to really try to move forward for a better management. And that is what Monica is going to explain us how they are really right now addressing part of these two big recommendations that they were really impeding the whole management effectiveness. I don't know, Monica, if you want to complement.
As Sandra says, one of the big findings in this exercise was because of the Galapagos different categories of the terrestrial park and the marine reserve had different management plans. It was difficult to do all the administration in the area. So one of the big recommendations was to do homework in the new management plan. That is what we are doing now. During this year we start this project where we are integrating the management of the marine and terrestrial reserves and with clear conservation targets and goals. Other recommendation was the redesign of the Galapagos National Park's internal structure. At the same time that we are doing this work with the new management plan, we are working with the new structure, and at the same time in Ecuador they are revising of the law regulations, and the Galapagos has a special law that is revising now too. Set up an integrated information system. In the Galapagos, as you know, is an island that are well known everywhere, but we have a lot of information, but we don't have it in the same format, so with the same analysis, so we can use for the management. So we have a lot of information that is not in the islands, that is not available for the managers, for the local managers. So we are trying to recover all that information and in Spanish, so then the managers of the island can use it, because we have a lot of information that is outside everywhere in different languages that is not available for decision making inside the islands. We are now in the process of the adjustment of the Galapagos Marine Reserve zoning. The zoning in the Galapagos Marine Reserve was established in the early 2000. And then we have different kind of uses in the coastal reserve. We have fishing, tourism, and conservation sites. But now we have information, and after 5 years of the evaluation of the zoning, we can work in some adjustments. This adjustment will be based on all the information that we have of the distribution of the species and these categories that we have, so we will know which areas are very important to preserve and then change and make adjustment to this zoning. Then we have to develop key policies and management strategies to address the fishing and the tourism. We have some problems with managing of some fisheries like the sea cucumber that collapsed a couple of years ago, and now we don't have that resource, and others are in critical stage as the lobster. But then with the new management plan, we are covering all the strategies at the moment. That is all now. We are going to work during all this year in the new management plan, and we expect to have all the information for next year. And we are developing all this process with all the managers, but the important thing is with the stakeholders, so they are supporting us in all this process with training and workshops too. Thank you.
Go to the next presentation. We'll actually be doing this one in the small group discussion. Next presentation. Vinod has been caught up at the ICC, so he'll be here eventually. If you could just move to the next one. Excuse me. Yeah. Young is now going to talk about the management effectiveness system evaluation in Korea.
Good morning. I'm Hagyama, working for Asian Asia Regional Biodiversity Conservation Program as a secondary from Korea National Park Service. I'm introduced the ME status in Korea. My presentation divided into 4 parts, so I would like to start with introduce the Korea Portfolio system and then first ME project in Korea, and afterward I will talk about the current progress and then future actions. The total territory is 100,000 square kilometers more than, and the territory is 86,000 square kilometers more than. And the total biodiversity status is more than 33,000 species. Actually, recently reported that more than 38,000 species inhabited in Korea. There are 2 major conservation approaches to protect nation biodiversity. So one is designate and management protect areas, and another one is designate protect species. So in terms of the protect areas, there are 15 types of protect areas with around 10 kinds of acts. Regarding the protected species, Minister of Environment designated endangered species. Currently, 221 endangered species in here, and Cultural Heritage Administration designates natural monument. So, Red Reserves designate protection species and things like that. And in Korea, so totally 1,379 protected areas with 17,000 square kilometers. Sorry. So it means 11.8% of total territory is protected by the total terrestrial protected areas, and then marine protected covers 6.1% of territorial sea. This slide shows the whole protected areas in Korea. Let me explain the first ME project in Korea. So we conducting ME project in cooperation with the Minister of Environment and ICN WCP experts, including the MARC, who is here. And supporting with is budgetary support from the Jeju Special Self-Governing Bodies. So totally 39 protected areas is the targeted and managed by Minister of Environment and Korea National Park Service, such as National Park, Ecosystem Landscape Conservation Area, Wetland Protected Area, and Wildlife Special Protected Areas. So we try to make the management tool, evaluation tool based on the ISNWC framework, and we developed suitable evaluation toolkit in Korea's perspective. So we carried out internal assessment by KM staffs, including me, and also external evaluation by Korean and domestic and foreign specialists. We also assess the individual protected area site as well as the whole protected area systems, I mean the environment system. Okay. The assessment method is the self-assessment method, similar to other ways. So, and interview with protected area steps and various stakeholders, around 100 people. And we operate the field missions with external review team members. and cross-check the data and opinions in order to. Thank you very much. In order to increase the credibility, reliability of the data. Yes, also we cross-check the whole document, official document and any other research document, etc. So as a result of our project, so 10 key recommendations is raised. So one is move from space conservation to ecosystem conservation, to strengthening system level planning and utility management and so on. Now I explain the aims and outcomes compared with the two things. So we propose to implement the CBD purple target. So purple target mentioned by 2006 meters on ME2 and implement ME at least 30% by 2010. So we reflect the Korea protected areas features and we developed our own management assessment tool and then assess about 42% of Korea protected areas. And purpose 2, aims 2 is review the protected area management in Korea state and suggest the possible improvement responses. So we check the current protected area management status and site 10 as well as the system level. So we provide 55 possible responses, including 10 key recommendations. And M3, take a leading position in protected area management. So we stimulated the other protected area management organizations, and Thailand also benchmarked our frameworks to implement their management assessment effectiveness evaluation. So I will show you some other influences within Korea's organizations. And capacity building, I will highlight this one. So we try to capacity building of our protected steps. So through a series of workshops and on-site education, so they can get better understanding of overall management policies and activities. And last aims is assessment tailored to protected areas, global comparison, and essential data for policy decision making. So we use the ME result while assessing the performance of government organization in Korea. So actually this result is more reliable to the government bodies and supportive for policy making, such as integrated air management systems. After this first ME project, we influenced some other organizations, also we improved within the organizations. So KMS ME built ME online assessment systems in 2011, so it's easy to evaluate the situation. So less budget and easily evaluated. And we try to input the ME into the national park master plan. It will decide at the end of this year. So this master plan requests to evaluate whole natural park. And regarding the Korea Forest Service, they changed the forest protection law this year. Last month it will start to work. And according to this provision, describe the ME and encourage to reflect the result of the ME result, their management plan. And nowadays they carry out the ME targeted on the 462 their forestry protected areas. And Ministry of Land, Transport and Maritime Affairs implement the scorecard method since 2008. So they usually simply evaluate the management project. So the local government usually manages their own way to go on protected areas. central governments using the scorecard and review their management status. So last year they studied how to improve their method. So next year we'll change the management tools. And so based on the already carrying out the ME, so conducted 57 project areas evaluated. So 47% of total areas of project areas evaluated and 4% of total number of project areas in Korea evaluated. So future actions. So KFS and MOE is now planning to second round of ME, so including the ERT external review team, in cooperation with external review team. So it will start next year. And one more thing is we try to link ME with Green List Initiative. So Green List Initiative is well-managed project areas. So the two projects could provide some synergy effects on our project area management. And promote to assess other project areas which are not evaluated yet. So reflect the result of the management plan. The management plan is day-to-day updated, but it's harder to reflect it. So we just still try to reflect the result into the management plan, day-to-day management. And the final aim is to construct the adaptive management system. That's all. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. I hope you saved out the questions. Mark is now going to talk about the Enhancing Our Heritage program. So,
just before I start, Young just mentioned the Green List Initiative, and Fiona also mentioned that. So I'm not going to talk about that today, but we do have, at 7 o'clock tonight, we have a presentation in the Protected Planet Pavilion, which will outline the Green List Initiative, which is about recognising well-managed protected areas. And on Tuesday the 11th at 11 o'clock in, I think it's room 303, we have a workshop where we'll go into a lot more of the technical detail and the operations of the Green List. So I'd encourage you, if you're interested in that, to come along to both of those events. So I'm going to now talk about some work that we did between 2000 and 2007, developing a management effectiveness assessment system for World Heritage Sites, although it could be applied to any protected areas, and it's probably the most detailed site-level assessment system that's been developed, and the work has continued since the project itself finished. The work was funded by the United Nations Foundation and was done in cooperation with the World Heritage Centre at UNESCO and IUCN. So the idea was to use the WCPA framework to develop a flexible approach to assessment, monitoring the state of conservation and the management effectiveness of World Heritage Sites. So there's a lot of attention here in actually developing new monitoring programs to fill gaps, to provide the data that we need so that we have a very strong evidence base for the assessment. And to work with managers to develop assessment tools and processes building on systems that they already had in the park, so that while we built a series of tools that they could use, we were also flexible in terms of integrating the work that managers were already doing. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel if they had programs or systems that were working. It was a self-assessment system, but it worked very closely with stakeholders and managers and experts, so a lot of use of workshops to integrate information from different sources and to bring in the data they had from their existing management systems. So we ran the project in 9 World Heritage Sites, and this was one of the great things about it. I didn't get to all of those sites, but I did get to most of them. So I'd certainly encourage people, if you work in World Heritage Sites, you get to some fantastic places. I'll never forget the time we spent with a group of mountain gorillas in Uganda, or times in all of the other parks, so that was great. We developed a workbook, and there are some CDs that contain not only the workbook but all of the reports that were developed from the sites, both the preliminary assessments and the final assessment tools and working projects. So grab one of the CDs, and if you want, let me know and I can send you one of the printed workbooks as well. So we drew tools from the best practices we could find around the world, drawing on work that TNC and others have done in their conservation action planning framework. But we developed them in a way that allows them to be adapted to meet the needs of the site and the way in which the site operates. But the idea was to build a comprehensive assessment of management effectiveness. Since the project's finished, it's subsequently been applied in another 12 World Heritage Sites in Africa, a lot of that by Geoffroy Morvay and his team in West Africa, but also in East Africa. It was incorporated into the approach that we used in the Galapagos Marine Reserve, had some additional